Welcome to San Juan, Puerto Rico, as I'm joined by Gavin Day of Red Nation Online as we launch our series From the Press Box, where we speak with some of the foremost journalists as we continue Canada's road towards Brazil 2014. Gavin, I want to start by talking about Friday's match against St. Lucia. I'm sure the team would admit that the performance wasn't probably up to scratch for them. That being said, I was disappointed to see some journalists already peg this team as not good enough to make it to the World Cup. Some journalists saying the road is already looking impassable. What's your take on that?
Obviously, I mean, if ever there was a time to be disappointed in a 4-1 result, this was the time. Obviously, St. Lucia, very much inferior to Canada. Canada looked to be on the right path when Josh Simpson scored just 5 minutes in. They were knocking the ball around with ease, but then that goal, which I think Lars Hirschfeld would save 9 times out of 10, that tied it up just a minute later, sort of threw a wrench into the plans. Canada, to their credit, rallied and got 3 in the second half, but it's one game. They have 5 more games in this round against inferior opponents, and I think with each game, I think we're going to see Canada combine better as a unit, and then after that, it's a 7-month break. So, I mean, maybe the conclusions are a bit harsh after one game. There still is a lot of time for things to come together, and let's not forget that the draw, was favorable to Canada this time. They avoid the U.S., they avoid Mexico should they get to that semifinal round. So, it's a bit early for conclusions, but, if we see performances like we did against better teams, then we might be seeing the end of the road.
Now, we know that Puerto Rico have drawn St. Kitts 0-0 in their first match. Of course, Canada knows this is going to be a much tougher match than it was on Friday. What can you take away from Puerto Rico's first result against St. Kitts, and what are you expecting tomorrow? Tomorrow on Tuesday.
I think Puerto Rico is going to be happy with the 0-0 result on the road. St. Kitts is the higher-ranked opponent. That being said, Canadian head coach Stephen Hart, he actually says Puerto Rico is the stronger side over St. Kitts. Obviously, the FIFA rankings aren't something we always take that seriously, but anytime you get a point on the road, you can be happy with, but when you're coming up against a Canadian team who honestly should get 3 points home and away in this round, it might not be enough, but I guess for the development of the game in Puerto Rico, 3 points, or 1 point rather, against a higher ranked opponent is something you're never gonna frown at.
Certainly, and we know it's not going to be easy for Canada coming into Puerto Rico. Likely to be some strong fan support tomorrow. On that note, some excellent crowd support at home in Toronto. Yes, only 11,500 fans there, but that being said, an excellent Canadian crowd. The most pro-Canadian crowd I can remember in my lifetime, at least. As a journalist sitting in the press box, how did it feel up there?
It was good to see. I mean, it was good to finally, I remember June 1st against Ecuador, where it was mostly yellow, and we had you have no idea where you are. Is this Canada? Is this Ecuador? It's a good start. I think the first real barometer is going to be when Puerto Rico goes back to play in Toronto in October, because St. Lucia, I'd imagine it's a much smaller community than the Puerto Rican community in Canada, as well as in the United States. So it is a good start, but I think the first test is going to come up on October 11th.
Certainly, and a massive test ahead for Canada, and a few more tests in this round. I think a lot of people have maybe taken it too lightly. Gavin is one of the few journalists to ever cover a World Cup qualifier on foreign soil, and Gavin, it's something that's happening more and more frequently. VJ Settler from CONCACAF is coming down this evening as well to cover the match tomorrow. Now that journalists like yourself have the ability to come down to these matches and you're getting support from the outlets back home, what do you think that says about the growing popularity of the game back in Canada?
I think it's about the growing domestic popularity of the game. I mean, for years it's been, the UEFA Champions League has been popular, the English Premier League, the Serie A, all that. Now with the emergence of the MLS in Canada, you see teams Toronto FC, the Vancouver Whitecaps, and next year with Montreal joining the MLS, and even a team like Edmonton, they all have their own supporters groups, of course, so they follow domestically, and they want to see what's going on with the national team. So, of course, with the emergence of modern technology, we're able to easily file to whatever we're doing work for, and the market is there and it's growing, and if we're there to satisfy that, all the better.
Well, as the crowds grow behind us and the thunder rumbles, we've got to get off the training. Canada's training session coming up here in San Juan. The match is coming up tomorrow night from Bayamon, which is just down the road here from San Juan. It's on Rogers Sportsnet 1 starting at 8 p.m. Gavin will be covering the match on Twitter as well as for Red Nation Online, amongst others, so be sure to check his stuff out. Gavin, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.